Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for having me at this summit. My name is Tiffany and Tiffany Yau, and I'm going to be going over a topic called overthinking impact. And I've definitely been thinking a lot about this topic in general lately. But yeah, it's really great to meet you guys. I am a social entrepreneur, a more recent author, and also a TEDx speaker. Currently, I actually work at a company in Los Angeles. So all of these things listed on this slide are really just things that I've been doing for some time and are more of my 5 to 9 than my 9 to 5. But I graduated from Penn back in 2018 from the college and completed my master's in nonprofit leadership in 2019. And I think impact has been a really big theme in everything that I've done looking back. And I think everything that I hope to continue to do is really along the lines of along the lines of the question, how can we find ways to make a meaningful, intentional impact in anything that we do? So that's like a big question that I often think about. But today I'm going to be kind of talking about overthinking impact in the realm of philanthropy and education. And in this slide, like it's a little bit of the work that I've done with my nonprofit work. Uh, in the headline, it says bring entrepreneurship education to students in underserved communities. And that was really what my nonprofit Fulfill has been doing over the past, I guess, 5 years at this point. Flies by so fast, especially with COVID. But uh, with this nonprofit organization, that was exactly what we did. And really, everything here, it's made such a meaningful impact, not just on the students, but even with everyone that we've ever worked with, including myself. And I think impact is definitely one of those things that you know, it's hard to measure because it's such a big thing, and I'm gonna go over that in a little bit as well. But I also ended up giving a TED talk about my work with this nonprofit and like some key takeaways, which I'm excited to share with you today. But really, I think the biggest thing that my work has informed me, and I guess that belief has continued to inform that work, is that everyone can make an impact. And really, with impact, it's so strange because we oftentimes have this problem with big, like this problem with big things. And when it comes to impact, we oftentimes think about, ice caps melting, animals growing closer to extinction, racism, discrimination, like all these big problems that have just been so systemic and ingrained into like what we know as our reality now. And I think, you know, it is a big problem and there's so many different things that need to be unpacked with all of those problems. And in my TED talk, I actually mentioned also that, we do have this problem with big, and, it's very natural, it's very daunting. Anything that is big almost just feels too insurmountable and just makes us want to give up just even thinking about it. It's much easier just to like not think about it and just like steer away from the idea of making an impact and do something easier. And I think when it comes to business and education, which is where my work has been really been at the intersection of, um, it's hard. It's really hard to kind of convince people that they can make an impact. But impact doesn't always have to be big. I think the biggest thing about impact is that sometimes the smallest things that we do can actually make the biggest difference. Impact doesn't always have to be big with that. um, you know, whether it's something in our typical everyday lives, whether it's like smiling at a stranger or like opening the door for someone, or just like giving someone a compliment, or even in the classroom in education of like maybe there's a teacher trying to just have nicer like mannerisms towards her students, like that makes a big difference for people. I think even in the realm of education, like there's a lot of things in education that we would want to change. And there's so many different things and so many different ways to be able to go about that. But I think the biggest thing is that it really begins with what's right in front of us. We can't solve all of the problems out there if we don't start somewhere. And I think that really brings me to this idea that the people closest to the problems are closest to the solutions. This is definitely a big mantra of the work that I've done with Fulfill. Uh, I mean, the whole phrase itself, I think it it definitely speaks at great lengths. The people closest to the problems, they know what those problems are. They know what like little nuances that they should be looking out for, to be avoiding, to kind of better leverage to like the people closest to the problems. Like they know those problems a lot better than those that are like more removed from it, but like want to make a difference. When we think about philanthropy, we can it's easy for us to think about like these people with like big wallets, big pockets, like throwing money at different types of initiatives and organizations out there. But oftentimes it's unfortunately not very uncommon that they haven't had like the exposure to those problems firsthand. And like that's okay too. It's like they're doing something great about it. But sometimes with the world of impact, it's always interesting because even with good intentions, there could be negative impact too. And that's what makes impact so interesting. I think impact, you definitely just have to be so intentional. And even if you don't experience that problem firsthand, um, you know, there's still many things that you could do to make a positive difference. Like maybe that's trying to like maybe if you can't exactly empathize of having been in those shoes of those people who have been close to the problems, like you can definitely um you can definitely try to understand. You can try to understand, you can try to make a difference. And that's like really where compassion shines through in the world of impact. And, oftentimes it's like we don't necessarily need to just be relying on people with big pockets, big wallets to be able to support the people closest to the problems because the people closest to the problems, they are the biggest assets of the communities. This is big for like any sector of impact, and especially in education. This is like the teachers, this is the parents, like this is every part of the education system. There's so many different moving parts, but the people who are on the ground doing the work every single day in, day out, they are really the ones who can do the most and move mountains, even though sometimes it's hard to acknowledge. It's sometimes the invisible work, but it's oftentimes the most meaningful. I guess with that, you know, impact, it's always hard to track too. Sometimes the biggest impact is also even hard to track. And I think when we think about impact and how it is um, big and sometimes impact can be overwhelming to people, like it's such a shiny great idea, but it can oftentimes also be just a little overwhelming to think about of like how can I, a single person, even make a difference in this world. And it's hard because there's no way to really easily track impact. Impact is hard to measure. It's not impossible to measure, but there are many things that need to take place. Impact should definitely be measured like a typical business with its like revenue and like different KPIs, different key performance indicators. But The thing is that impact is nonlinear and longitudinal. When I say this as well too, it's like when we think about impact, it's never straightforward. It's not like once I do this, this will lead to that, and that will lead to some other thing. It's gonna be a lot of back and forth with different things. You're gonna go from point A to point B, then maybe you'll go back to point A again, back to the drawing board, and then go back to point B, and then maybe you'll get to point D, and then you'll go back to point C. Like, there's always so many different things that are required to really build this positive difference in the world. And I think as people too, like we like linear things. We're built to like linear things. Like if someone tells you a story, you're gonna automatically like want to know what the next thing that's gonna happen is. But with impact, it's not always like that. Like it won't always be straightforward. You're gonna like it can be 2 steps forward, 1 step back, 3 steps forward, 1 step back. You never know. But that's also one of the more exciting things about it. But part of the nonlinearity is the fact that it's longitudinal. It takes a long time to measure impact. There's like short-term impact and long-term impact. Like my short-term impact for this year, for instance, like, yeah, maybe we've taught like a few thousand students. Like that's great. But and maybe they've gotten XYZ skill sets out of it that are able to help them with their future careers. But with that, it's like, how does that shape their long-term impact? What is our long-term impact even? Will these skill sets be applicable to them many years down the line? Or is it just something that will just be helpful for them this year? Like, how can we really be intentional with measuring our impact and creating our impact? And I think that's oftentimes one of the harder things. But I think oftentimes we really do get too ahead of ourselves. I think oftentimes if we kind of take it one step at a time, it's very much achievable. I think, um, you know, when we think about our long-term impact of like the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals of, um, I think it's like no poverty by this year, like in the world, right? And that's huge. Like I don't know how that's gonna happen either, but it's like to be able to set that long-term impact and like really break it down. Maybe that means X jobs created by the end of this year, um, or many other metrics beyond that. Providing people with jobs, making sure they're sustainable. What does sustainability within that job look like? And really breaking that down. Um, so I think, impact it is really a nonlinear and longitudinal thing, which oftentimes is what makes it overwhelming. But the biggest thing is that we can't be overwhelmed by impact. We can't overthink it. We oftentimes really do just get way too ahead of ourselves and overthink, and it just doesn't even happen. Like our impact just doesn't even shine through. And I think we all have the potential to make a positive difference in this world. I've seen it through all of our students, even like the most stubborn ones, like to be able to break down the idea that they can make a difference. Like I think that is actually like the most powerful thing that you could do um, to for anyone to make them see the difference that they can make. So I guess the main takeaway is, don't get too ahead of yourself. Like impact is big, but it's meant to be big. It's not supposed to be something that's easily fixable or solvable within a day, within like a few efforts. It's going to take a lot of different efforts, a lot of people. But I think that's also one of the really awesome things about it. It's like the pursuit of impact. And I think with that, there's ways that everyone can make an impact in their everyday lives as well too. And I usually like breaking this down into these four things, like noticing. To notice, that's one of the biggest things. To be able to like slow down and really be aware and understand like what is going on around me, noticing like the small problems, but also figuring out some potential solutions. Like you're the one who is closest to those problems. And so for you to notice and to have that sense of awareness, like that's definitely the first step. And to be able to break that down in like this problem solver way, to be able to understand like why is there so much trash on this street? Like, why aren't people picking this stuff up? Okay, like it's maybe there's more problems beyond that, but it's like even if you want to pick that problem apart, like there's something that you could probably do about it in small ways. Second is believing in your own potential to make an impact. Everyone can make an impact. It's the people closest to the problems, and that's what empowers you and everyone around you who is also close to their own set of problems to be able to do so with you're equipped with your own experiences and the passion for that problem to want to make an impact. um, just do, don't overthink it. Just do the thing to make the impact, no matter how big or small it is. The smallest things sometimes are the things that make the biggest impact. And it doesn't have to be a grand disruptive thing. It starts one person at a time, one thing at a time, and that grows. And most importantly, it's to empower other people around you to also make that positive impact. So oftentimes I often think with my team that, it's not the impact that you're even set out to make at the end of the day. It's that whole pursuit, it's that whole journey. Um, it's not just about what you're set out to make at the end of the day, but it's how you impact the people around you as well, because they're only going to go off and hopefully make their own form of impact as well. And yeah, so I think, impact definitely super easy to overthink, but um, if you notice, believe, just do it and empower others, you're not too far away from making that difference that you hope to make. And yeah, I guess with this, thank you so much for listening to my talk. If you want to further keep in touch, you can follow me on Twitter, Instagram, at Tiffany underscore another underscore Yau, or you can email me if you want to just chat at tiffany@fulphil.org. Um, we're also publishing books, our own set of books tomorrow, actually. So, what I guess that's today or this weekend, whenever the summit takes place. So, you can actually scan this QR code if you want to uh, get a pre-sale of it before it actually releases. But thank you so much for having me, and I really appreciate it. Hope you continue to make your impact out there.